Time keeps on a-ticking, but it never hurts to reminisce. In fact, some of the biggest pieces of media today are built off of our admiration for what we created in the past.
Both throwing back to the 1930s, mischief runs through their veins like the magma rivers of hell. A place these two are all too familiar with, whether being from there or kicking the behind of its overlord. There's no denying these two know a thing or two about artistic integrity.
Bendy, the dancing demon.
Cuphead, the headstrong savior of the Inkwell Isle.
For this episode, basically anything goes. Books, cartoons, and of course games are all fair. Oh, and as you may know, there are two versions of Bendy, both of which we will be discussing to cover all bases.
Ribbit.
A great slam and then some.
Max.
Let's make dreams come true.
Alright, let the episode commence.
'29, a time of innovation for Joey Drew and Henry Stein, as they created the next big cartoon icon, Bendy, the mischievous demon. Making his debut appearance in The Little Devil Darlin', Bendy charmed the nation, with toys, comics, food deals, and even an entire amusement park in the works.
Joey was on top of the world. He had a dream and it was almost fulfilled, filling millions with hope and inspiration.
You just have to believe in yourself, and remain honest, motivated, and above all, who you really are.
Ah, what a lovely man. Nice to see another great visionary in this line of work.
Okay, let's stop right there. I can only do so many takes in this trashy day.
Oh, yeah, Joey wasn't the nicest guy around as it turns out, and as such, this company had a few skeletons in its closet, from the hostilities of the work environment to full-on disappearances linked to one Mr. Drew. But where did they go? Well, that leads us to the overambition of this crooked man.
Joey had bizarre fantasies of bringing his animated characters to life, going slightly crazy, or maybe that's an understatement. The souls of his workers were used to create ink creatures, almost human, but not quite. But the first to ever be created was Bendy himself, who actually never had the luxury of a soul, and as such, didn't come out looking great.
Another understatement. All these ink creatures now reside in another world Joey created himself, dubbed the Cycle, which is where the story we follow in the games truly takes place. Bendy, or as he's more often referred to in this realm, the Ink Demon, now being its self-proclaimed king. But does he live up to that title though?
Well, he's strong enough to one-shot Henry, who fought and ultimately killed Brute Boris, who's capable of smashing crates, ride carriages, and can shake the ground just by running. Bendy himself also smashed poor Henry through a metal wall.
He's also seen destroying rafts and even shattering these walls like paper. Doing this would actually require small building levels of strength. Not bad for a soulless monster. And he's not just muscle. You better be a good runner if you encounter him.
He can keep up with Henry on foot, and in his monster form is much faster than the average human. He can also scale to Audrey, who dodged being shot at by a Tommy gun. Not that he'd ever need to dodge such things, since gunfire has virtually no effect on the Ink Demon.
Same for all matters of physical punishment, really. Pipes, axes, even hits from this Goliath here, Ship Ahoy Dudley, who tore Audrey's legs off casually. All of that power amounts to a lot, but does put quite the target on his back. The Ink Demon was considered unkillable, but someone found a way to make him look a little bit more familiar.
Reverting to a more innocent form, Bendy shook his monstrous qualities. However, that isn't to say he can't fend for himself like this. He threw a burger through a window, pulled Alice Angel around with ease, and hurt frightening monsters with projectiles.
Heck, the little guy can scale to Boris the Wolf, who ate a majority of the moon and continued to run around like it was nothing, and then proceeded to hold onto a shooting star without losing his grip.
We don't know its true speed, but shooting stars generally move at Mach 32 to 156 at their peak. He can also outrun trains, and Alice Angel has dodged bullets in her plane.
But say he can't quite run away from who he's facing, he's got the durability to keep on trucking. Laser blasts, heat potent enough to boil ponds, and even a fall from space all left this little guy unfazed.
As a cartoon character, his body is basically made of rubber instead of ink. He's been squashed and stretched in a multitude of ways, and can even stretch his arms.
Not a stretch to call him an impressive magician though, able to grant sentience to inanimate objects like snowmen and gingerbread men, to even telekinetic abilities, able to lift and spin Alice Angel like she was on a lazy Susan without laying a finger on her. And what's a magician without their magic hat, which has a crocodile on the side that will immediately attack him? Trust me, he has better weapons.
He's used random objects such as bricks, axes, saws, anvils, and even a little toy buzzer to prank people with. He's got a grappling hook, magneto boots that allow him to walk up surfaces, and a small box that can become a hot air balloon if he wants to traverse the friendly skies.
But Bendy's greatest weapon would have to be his pitchfork, a magical and powerful wish-granting tool, able to bring objects to life, turn something as small as a goldfish into a city-destroying monster, and even hypnotize people into becoming his servants. But there is a drawback here. Everything that it creates will immediately become evil, and they'll not always be on Bendy's side after this happens.
It's a good thing these weapons and abilities were wielded by someone who was ultimately nice, despite his penchant for mischief. But this would not last. The machines that were keeping the Ink Demon at bay were ultimately shut down, and the monstrous form took control again.
The animalistic tendencies of this ruler are nothing to scoff at. He's won fights time and time again, even against foes built to be stronger than him, and his stealth is unmatched.
He can discern noises across the entire studio, and in the Dark Revival, we see that he can actually talk. This came in handy when he talked Audrey into allowing himself to consume her, showing a manipulative mind resides beyond that menacing grin.
The Ink Demon is nothing short of indestructible thanks to his physiology. Being composed of ink, he can shapeshift at will, growing in size exponentially, to the point where he shook the ground beneath his feet simply by running on it, or sank boats with a single slap. Ink creatures have also shown to be able to come back from horrible injuries, like when he reduced Sammy Lawrence to a puddle, and yet he returned, good as new, not long after. And there's no reason to doubt that the Ink Demon could do the same.
The Ink Demon can teleport into ink puddles and even use said ink to corrupt enemies. When you touch Bendy's ink for too long, you'll be claimed, which will result in you becoming a featureless, hopeless underling to the Ink Demon. It's possible that even a single touch from him can corrupt you if he wills it.
His presence alone can fill entire rooms with ink, and it's not like a room that seems safe can really be considered so, when he can go through walls. Hard to be sure of your danger levels when he can induce hallucinations too.
And should he get his claws on you, you'll likely be consumed by the inky abyss of his mouth, becoming one with him as you hopelessly watch him use your body for even more destruction.
That is, unless you have a strong enough will to resist it and take control, which is one of many weaknesses the Ink Demon and his cartoon counterpart have bogging them down.
It appears that Wilson's towers, using high levels of voltage, can reduce Bendy back to his cartoony state, and while this does seem fine on paper, he will lose his monstrous edge in a few of his abilities.
And this cartoon version is a total pushover, never engaging in combat really, more fleeing and hoping to be the quicker runner. He's easy to scare and childish too, which isn't going to do him any favours either.
But Bendy's biggest weakness of all came from being exposed to the end. After the tape was played, the beast was evaporated, resulting in a complete reset of his timeline.
This timeline was only savable thanks to Audrey, the daughter of Joey Drew, who entered the cycle and discovered how to make it a nicer place for everyone inside from the real world. Now with the little goofy version of Bendy by her side, the imposing shadow once left by the Ink Demon is now vacant. But it's hard to deny that while he was around, he made his presence known, and all cowered in fear at its thought. Let's visit somewhere a little more, cheery. Roughly 29 miles off the coast, the sprawling landscapes of the Inkwell Isle are nothing short of joyous. Busy cities, greenery abound, and carnivals abundant. Hard to believe that it's under the thumb of someone as evil as Satan himself.
Or at least, it was. Until Cuphead and his brother Mugman took a trip to his casino, rolling snake eyes when promised riches beyond his imagination. He and his brother agreed to gather up the devil's runaway debtors' soul contracts in exchange for theirs, heading off to save their very souls.
Lucky for the brothers, their guardian, the Elder Kettle, had access to a tincture that was sure to make this job a whole lot easier. After consuming it, Cuphead's power grew quickly, and that's hard to deny after seeing what he's accomplished, defeating everything from a root pack of sentient comestibles to the stark crazy and kooky scientist Dr.
Don't speak his name.
To the saloon-sized cowgirl, Esther Winchester.
Better.
Opponents of every shape and size will of course give you strength to spare. He can destroy stone walls and a large metal acorn maker. He's fought off living fortresses, boats, trains, and giant dragons capable of burning down Porkrine's Emporium. He even took on Hildeberg, who created a storm in a fit of rage. Heck, Glumstone the Giant is literally the size of a mountain. turning into one while sleeping. This Goliath destroyed this massive chunk of rock beneath Cuphead's very feet, which equated to well over 7 tons of TNT.
Not only did he beat Chef Saltbaker, who destroyed his massive basement and eventually bakery, but also defeated the devil, who's even stronger than that. But the greatest feat of strength this sentient chinaware has shown off was the time he lassoed the moon and pulled it downwards, with enough force to make it affect the sun too.
It's impressive how quickly that lasso was able to reach the moon. Barely a second. Beyond that, he can dodge missiles, lightning, and lasers being fired at him. His pal Mugman can outrun a roller coaster, and Cuphead himself outran Baroness von Bonbon's castle.
Cuphead's also shown to be fully capable of outpacing the devil, who piloted Santa's sleigh and delivered every present in one night, putting his reactions at over 8,000 times the speed of sound.
If you've played the game, you might make the mistake that Cuphead is some sort of a glass cannon. But make no mistake, he can survive all kinds of things you'd expect a cartoon character to live through. He's toughed through all manner of explosions, some even destroying houses and boats. He also typically takes punishment from foes way larger than him.
He withstood the sun specifically aiming its heat at him, being frozen solid, getting shat on for pretty much all of Dangerous Mugman, and even the electric chair! What heinous crimes did he commit to earn that?
Underage gambling, of course! Or maybe attempted murder. Luckily, despite the world's best efforts, Cuphead always gets back up to face the challenge ahead of him. And thankfully, that resolve was rewarded as he gained numerous abilities in his adventures.
With a snap of his finger, Cuphead can fire one of 9 projectile types. The straight shot pea shooter, a close range spread, homing chasers, bouncy dense lobbers, potent charge shots, rebounding roundabouts, piercing converge, and the multi-purpose crack shot, able to deal damage up close and home in with weaker shots when afar. Oh, and twist up, which is fucking ass.
Let's not forget his super moves. With his first super, he shoots that mysterious liquid in his head as a beam of energy that deals a lot of damage. His second super forms a horrific smiling version of himself, which somehow translates into Cuphead being intangible for a short while. And finally, he has super number 3, which spawns a buff ghost version of himself that can spin around and stun enemies.
Fun fact, that mysterious liquid is actually his very soul, which explains why it endlessly refills, even when it's emptied, and why his eyes are vacant in the devil's death screen.
Ribbit?
Yeah?
What does this have to do with anything?
He can speed up the process in which these supers become available to him with his parry maneuver, where he slaps pink objects to destroy or neutralize them, giving him power to use at his leisure.
Cuphead also appears to be able to resist transmutation, as shown when Cala Maria turned him into stone, only for him to shake it off and break through. He was also once turned into candy, and was shown to be fine in the next episode. Next on the agenda is his strange ability to hop into movies and hang out with the characters within them.
Should be easy enough to guess, going off him being squashed flat to go into said movie. Cuphead has Toon Force. His head can come off with no ill effects, his eyes immediately healed after being burnt away by Elder Kettle's disgusting shine.
Maybe I am disgusting.
And his limbs and body can stretch in a multitude of ways. Most impressively would be the time he stretched his arm across an entire amusement park.
Moreover, he has a pen and pencil he can use for creativity and the conjuring of living beings. But the pencil comes with an eraser he can use to erase others. Not even his own brother's face is safe. He can take to the skies with a fast-moving plane, can increase his strength with a potion from pork rind, use the smoke bomb to teleport short distances, and use whetstone to turn his parry into a damaging axe attack.
His already impressive durability can be increased with the likes of the Twin Heart or Heart Ring, and the speed at which his power replenishes can be increased drastically with coffee. But out of all the MacGuffins Cuphead has come across, none are as potent as the Divine Relic. Originally, Cuphead was actually limited to how many charms and shots he could utilize at once. However, upon awakening an ancient trinket by defeating a demon and angel duo within the astral dream realm, it unlocked Cuphead's full capabilities. Growing more experienced through combat scenarios, the relic winds up granting him every charm's capabilities, and the ability to use every shot in tandem. It even increases some charm's capabilities, for example, charging up his super meter faster than Coffee does. It also grants increased speed, with him now leaving after images in his wake.
Cuphead has a cannon that he likes to play with, commonly using too much gunpowder in the process. He's got rockets to blow things up, and a cookie that lets him swap places with Miss Chalice, who is naturally more durable, can do a double jump, and has a phasing roll, along with general powers that come from being a ghost, like possession and invisibility.
The porcelain-headed ankle-biter even found himself in possession of the Devil's Pitchfork for a time. This thing's magical potential was massive, leaving buildings on fire, mountains carved, and even reshaping entire cities. It grants Cuphead flight, the ability to turn objects sentient, reverse time, teleport, transmutate others, telekinetically move things, and, of course, shoot fire.
Despite being so childish, Cuphead is pretty crafty, able to create his own plane out of scrap metal found in a junkyard. He's also an excellent boxer, which isn't surprising considering he was able to go toe-to-toe with most of the citizens within the Inkwell Isle in order to collect their contracts.
Despite being a gifted piano player and devising mashed potato-based explosives, Cuphead is usually a bit airheaded, or I guess liquid-headed, which hurts him in quite a few ways. He's very headstrong, choosing to double down more often than not. He's got lazy tendencies and can be tricked quite easily as well. His catchphrase is literally,
I ain't too worried about it.
So he's not really the most dependable on taking things seriously. I mean, the world does throw him a bone more often than not. Take it from the guy who's given the task of rolling a number on a dice and wound up making them spontaneously combust.
And yet, despite his immaturity, he eventually made the most mature decision of his life, when he went against the devil and decided he wouldn't give up all the contracts he had gathered, instead opting to take on the devil in combat. Even with the odds stacked against him, Cuphead managed to push through with some help from Mugman, and ultimately left the devil a blubbering mess.
Cuphead and his pal Mugman were the island's saviors, and were celebrated as such. The Inkwell Isles were now free from Satan's conniving clutches, despite his headstrong attitude. On that day, Cuphead proved what it truly meant to be a noble hero.
Okay, now that we've seen both sides of the coin, the gloves are coming off. Their worlds are crossing over. Let's see what happens when these characters show their fictional fisticuffs.
The Inkwell Isles, 2 PM. On a bright, joyous day, the park was littered with many colourful characters, enjoying themselves to no end. Bouncy sentient flowers all around, elevating the delightfully high-spirited greenery to where it could be a crime not to indulge in its presence. And this did not go unnoticed to the dancing demon himself, Bendy, who was playing with his choo-choo train toy, blissfully unaware of how much this day was about to escalate.
Nice choo-choo. But if you think that's cool, watch this!
Before him stood Cuphead, with a train strapped to an explosive rocket. Lighting the match, Bendy watched in amazement as it circled around in the air. But that childlike wonder soon faded as the rocket hurtled towards the ground, smashing into Bendy's prize locomotive, destroying it. Bendy looked up at Cuphead, tears filling his eyes.
You're getting all worked up over nothing. This is an easy fix.
Cuphead said, side-eyeing the ashes of the once-functioning train sets. Looking back, he noticed that Bendy had disappeared. Shrugging it off, Cuphead began to take his leave, until he heard a distant whistling getting louder and louder, and in the blink of an eye his head grew significantly heavier. An anvil had been dropped inside it. Cuphead stumbled over and Bendy giggled from the tree branch. Now angered, Cuphead leaped up and used whetstone to slice the branch in twain, and sent Bendy tumbling down the tree.
That's the last straw!
Here's a real high-class bout.
Cuphead began to chase Bendy down, who ran, still giggling to himself mischievously. But this faded when Cuphead began to fire his pea-shooter shots at his foe, noticeably hurting the little devil. Bendy began to throw all sorts of objects at his pursuing adversary, but Cuphead dashed and leaped over it all. Finally catching up and pouncing at him, Bendy stopped him in mid-air with his telekinesis and threw him into a tree, out of which fell a pink ladybug, which Cuphead grinned at and parried, letting him use a potent EX move on Bendy, sending him flying into the busy cityscape. Getting up, he noticed Cuphead flying overhead in a plane, dropping bombs down towards him. Frantically thinking, Bendy put on his magneto boots and scaled up a lamppost, giving him just enough height to use his insta-balloon. He soon reached Cuphead's height and began to throw more knickknacks at him. But Cuphead's maneuverability proved too great, darting around them all and eventually popping a hole in Bendy's balloon. Bendy leaped from it and onto Cuphead's plane.
Hey! Get off! This plane is made for one!
Bendy soon leaped off, much to the relief of Cuphead, but he soon realised that the reason he did this was because they were about to crash. Smashing into the floor, Cuphead flung into a window, leaving a Cuphead-shaped hole in its wake, getting kicked out the front door and into a manhole by Sally's stage play. And stay out! Cuphead emerged from the sewer and shook away the stars swelling around his cranium, before looking up to see Bendy with a hand extended.
Gee, thanks! You know, You ain't so bad.
Before he could finish, a strong electrical surge went through Cuphead's body. Bendy laughed at his expense, but Cuphead had just the ticket to get back at him. Pulling out the devil's pitchfork, Cuphead returned the favour, zapping Bendy into next week. Coming back to his senses, Bendy pulled out a pitchfork of his own, zapping all kinds of inanimate objects to life. Cuphead returned the favour, smashing them to bits with fireballs and turning many of them on Bendy, who fled in a panic, with Cuphead giving chase.
I've had about enough of pitchfork-wielding demons for one lifetime!
A small rat in a tank made from an old tin can dashed by Bendy's feet, causing the little guy to trip. Now fully caught up, Cuphead pulled out a large pencil and erased Bendy's face.
Talk about defacing!
Cuphead grinned to himself before Bendy snatched the pencil out of his hand, drawing a now angry face on himself. Pushing Cuphead back with the eraser, Cuphead in retaliation pulled out his paintbrush and drew a hole beneath Bendy's feet, which he fell into. Not too long later, however, Bendy used his grappling hook to get back out. As soon as his head popped out of the ground though, he found himself face to face with a cannon.
Bombs away!
However, the cannon exploded with far more power than Cuphead had expected, shooting both him and Bendy out of the cartoon, and into the animation studio it was being played at. Cuphead woke up, dazed.
Yeah. Definitely still too much gunpowder.
Eventually he came to and saw that Bendy had pulled out his pitchfork again, to which Cuphead did the same. Bendy stared down his porcelain foe, but before he could cast any more magic with his pitchfork, Cuphead shot a blast of electricity that knocked the pitchfork out of his hands. Unfortunately for everyone involved, the pitchfork happened to stab something vital that was keeping a set of signal towers active, and now that they were shut down, Bendy began to change. His teeth became more spiked, and his body grew larger and more threatening. What were previously comparable to mittens were now large, hearty claws. It was no longer Bendy standing before Cuphead, it was the Ink Demon, as Cuphead began to take a few steps back.
You okay there, fella?
The demon responded by gripping Cuphead in his now gigantic hand, forcing him to let go of the pitchfork. Bendy chucked Cuphead against the wall hard enough to leave a crack, as he picked up the devil's pitchfork and snapped it like a twig with ease. Cuphead's eyes shrunk into small dots as he saw this, and he began to feel around in his pockets for something else he could use. The Ink Demon set his sights on Cuphead, and began to charge at him, unleashing a horrific howl that chilled Cuphead down to his very bone. Frozen in fear, Cuphead just stood there as Bendy swiped at him with a mighty swing of his claw. Cuphead was knocked deeper into the halls of Jerry Drew Studios. However, the hit to his noggin knocked some sense into him. As he began to run for his life, Bendy pursued the cup, growing larger in the process. Cuphead began to fire off his pea shooter, confident that it would be able to harm Bendy just like it did before. However, the small pellets had zero effect on the beast. As he continued to pursue his prey, Cuphead found himself getting close to a crossroads, and using some quick thinking, he used his smoke bomb at the intersection, causing Bendy to become confused with which direction Cuphead had taken. However, upon hearing Cuphead trip over a couple of Bendy cutouts in the hall to his right, he was back on the chase. However, this distraction managed to give Cuphead a lead, as he was now a decent distance away. Noticing a nearby film projector, Cuphead hopped inside the film to hide. Bendy stomped into the room and saw Cuphead on the screen, pretending to be Bendy. Cuphead nervously laughed as he did a dance on screen, giving himself little devil horns with his fingers. This desperate act did not fool the demon, who promptly destroyed the film projector, causing Cuphead to pop out back into the physical plane. Bendy roared at his foe, but Cuphead managed to find some bravery as he stood up and faced his adversary.
Alright, you big jerk! I ain't scared of you! Not even a little bit! If I can tussle with the devil, a puny demon ain't too much to worry about!
Cuphead wound up his fist as the Ink Demon prepared to lunge at him. Bendy swiped his claws at Cuphead, but he was able to leap above it, as he fired his spread attack into Bendy's head. It wasn't very effective, but Cuphead kept up his attacks, planning to wear the demon down, like he had with so many other foes in the past. Bendy continued to swipe wildly at his foe, but Cuphead proved to be too agile, evading just about every swipe and eventually making a break for it down the hall. As he ran, Cuphead continued to rapidly fire his pea shooter. As Cuphead ran, he began to use Roundabout to hit his pursuing foe. Much to the Ink Demon's chagrin, he was finally starting to take effect from these attacks. He noticed that this tactic wasn't working out anymore, and decided to smash the wooden floor with all his might, which caused it to give way. The two plummeted deeper into Jerry Drew Studios as Cuphead found himself being plunged into darkness.
The darkness you now surround yourself with is of my realm. You are but a speck compared to it, and even less to me.
Cuphead's bravery from earlier began to disappear, as he was now unable to make heads or tails of his situation. However, thinking quickly, Cuphead took out a massive assortment of fireworks he kept with him, and used a match to light them off. As the fireworks rapidly darted around the room, Cuphead's surroundings were finally illuminated, and he saw that the ink demon was now even larger than before. Cuphead was scared for sure, but he was never the kind to give up. Even when staring down certain death, he unleashed a charge shot at the massive Bendy as he ran towards the beast. Luckily for Cuphead, he was able to leap onto several pipes down in the depths of Jerry Drew Studios that allowed him to reach the top of Bendy's head. Cuphead unleashed a powerful ghostly version of himself, with huge muscles and a confident grin. The muscle-bound Cuphead swung around, punching the ink demon in the face over and over again. As this happened, Cuphead fired multiple lobbers at Bendy, further damaging the beast. However, when the spirit dissipated, Bendy was able to set his sights back on Cuphead. Enraged, Bendy snatched Cuphead as fast as he could and chucked him into the wall, hard enough to leave an even bigger crater than the one left earlier. Cuphead was dazed as the ink demon stepped even closer. The Cup was barely able to get back on his 2 feet as Bendy taunted him.
A futile effort. In my realm, there is no escape. Your fate is sealed.
The floor grew less and less steady as he slowly approached, but Cuphead had managed to delay the demon long enough for his super meter to fill up again. And right as it seemed like his time had come, Cuphead rose to the ground and leaped into the air.
What are you doing?
Doubling down!
From the top of Cuphead's head came a powerful blast of liquid that hit right on target. The ink demon howled as his body was slowly washed away, reducing him to nothing. Cuphead landed back down, tired.
That's what happens when you mess with... Wait. Where's the exit?
Knockout!
It appears that Bendy has finally seen the end of his odd existence.
This was much closer than one would initially think. The height of their Toon Force led both to moon-related shenanigans, but Boris eating the moon did take time, and Cuphead pulling the moon at those speeds would ultimately be a more impressive feat, even without considering how it affected the sun.
Cuphead also had the notable speed advantage. By chucking his lasso to the moon that quickly, he achieves near light speeds. Even without that, Cuphead dodging lightning is ultimately a quicker speed feat than Bendy catching a shooting star.
But still, Bendy's a tough one to put down. While individually Cuphead had a very obvious advantage, with the Ink Demon's physicality not really being comparable, while his cartoon counterpart's fighting skills and abilities weren't nearly potent enough. When combined, Cuphead was against a creature who could match him in many ways.
Luckily, Bendy and the Ink Machine gives us just enough information on how ink creatures work to help us figure out how he can be defeated. It's stated that ink creatures behave like drops in the ocean and can be washed away, which is something Cuphead could achieve using his first super.
Bendy could, in theory, consume his adversary, or turn him into an ink creature, but Cuphead's arsenal is almost entirely long range, and coupled with his dash, smoke bomb, and methods of turning intangible, he's going to be next to impossible to hit with that speed advantage of his. Their pitchforks were pretty comparable, both able to transform and create monsters that the other would have to fend off, but Cuphead's could reverse time, which is definitely a potent ability that his opponent didn't really have a counter for. Meanwhile, Bendy's hypnosis only works momentarily, before turning the person who's being used on into a demonic foe, which, funnily enough, we've actually seen Cuphead as, and we know it only makes him even more dangerous. It's also not out of the question that Cuphead could somewhat resist some of Bendy's hacks, given that he can revert back to normal after being turned to stone, which has been shown to be possible through having a strong heart, the very thing that let Audrey take control after she was consumed.
You have to have heart.
Cuphead is generally more experienced with combat, basically going on a huge boss rush in the game, never failing despite all of the strange attacks being thrown his way. In comparison, Bendy's fights are a lot more animalistic, and tend not to last as long because most foes in his universe can't compete against him. Plus, Cuphead's arsenal is far more combat-centered, while Bendy's mostly consisted of cartoon items he just found in the moment. It doesn't help that more than one of Cuphead's options appear to utilize electricity, which seems to be a way to revert the Ink Demon's powers.
The final nail in the coffin was his pencil, which could erase Bendy lickety-split, like Joey says, just a pencil in a dream. Ultimately, even giving Bendy the benefit of the doubt and compositing both versions of him into one, Cuphead's physical attributes and fighting spirit still overcame the demonic powers of the cycle's ruthless ruler.
Ding dong, the Ink Demon's dead, making today's winner the one and only Cuphead.